Among the North Carolina businesses hardest hit by Governor Cooper's COVID-19 shutdowns are bars, taverns, and distillers. Very few customers, if any, means very little, if any, revenue to pay the bills, keep the doors open, and pay your employees. But some are fighting back, and not only here in North Carolina. John Trump is managing editor of Carolina Journal. Carolina Journal, of course, has been following the plight of these business owners very, very closely. John joins us now to talk about where we are. John, welcome back to the program.
Thanks.
What do you hear in general, John, from North Carolina bar and tavern owners as you've been not only following but writing columns and news stories about this?
The biggest word is just frustration. There's nothing they can do. They've been closed basically for all intent and purposes since March when Cooper put in the lockdowns. And bars really have been the only businesses not to open. And bars, restaurants, common sense tells you a restaurant is a bar, can be a bar. But bars typically have just been shut down. And he put in limited seating, but most don't have the capacity. And it's just like, for example, Coughlin's downtown on Fayetteville Street just closed.
In
Zach
Raleigh.
Medford announced yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I think REL reported 100, at least 100 in the Triangle have closed. And there's been some relief money, but rent's exorbitant. Like the Poorhouse has tried to, supplement with a record shop. And they're trying to be creative about it, but I think without a doubt been hardest hit by this.
You mentioned Zach Medford. He also leads an organization that kind of coalesced to try to get the ear of the public, the governor, legislators, the North Carolina Bar and Tavern Association, I believe is its name. But they, for some reason, have not been able to get people who have the juice to do something about it, frankly, to help them or to look at the issues and about seating and comparing them to hotels, etc.
Right, and they've tried to move the needle. He's held protests, and like I say, some bars have done what they can, put up partitions, so on and so forth. But they have to be a restaurant too. So if you're just a bar, which technically in North Carolina there's no such thing as a bar. It's a private club. You're in a word screwed. And they just tried. They've talked a lot. Like I said, they've met with the governor, and for whatever reason, and I think throughout this pandemic, bars have been the target because they're seen as a gathering place. And I think the picture of a bar, we all see it differently, but I think the picture of the bar is what you see on Glenwood, Glenwood South on Saturday night, where people huddle together. And in fact, I know of a brewery which is always packed, and they're allowed to open because they're make their own product, and a bar next to it, right next to it, that share the same courtyard, theoretically can't serve drinks. Although they do, and they've kind of moved into the space. So, they've tried to get around it, but it's unfortunate that I think the governor unilaterally has put them in this position.
And in fact, some are fighting back beyond talking about it and trying to let the public know what's going on with their businesses. We have, for example, a couple of lawsuits. One of them, Greenville Bar, is suing, and then there's a suit of a coalition of a handful of other bars also suing. Do they have a chance legally?
The bowling alley sued, and then it got to the point, and there have been a couple other lawsuits, got to the point that with the friendly Supreme Court on Cooper's side, it wasn't going to go anywhere. I think now the courts are friendlier. However, looking at it realistically, with the variants, with the COVID variants now, and the numbers shooting through the roof, quite honestly, not a lot of hope until there's a vaccine. Until the vaccine, and we have community herd immunity, that nothing will happen. And I'm afraid Cooper talks to this is Wednesday today, and he may go back. So.
Well, in fact, there's been a lot of attention now on the slow rollout of the actual vaccination plan, because the vaccines are now available in limited supplies, yes, but they have been shipped now for a number of days to states. And in fact, Governor Cooper now, it looks like at the urging of at least one Democratic state lawmaker, calling out the National Guard to try to get this thing going. A really frustrating and fascinating, frankly, development on this whole issue of bars, etc. At the federal level, came up a few days ago when you wrote about this, John, at carolinajournal.com. We had some of those manufacturers who said, hey, I can't open, I got to do something, we're in the middle of a pandemic, I'm going to make some of this hand sanitizer. Tell us the story of what has happened to them.
Well, they were shut down. They couldn't really. Their tasting rooms were closed, right? And you can't. A lot of them opened bars to serve cocktails. Well, that's closed. So, and I think a big part of it was let's help out. We have the ethanol. We can make ethanol, right? Which is the base for alcohol and the base for hand sanitizer. And I said, let's jump in and do this. And many did, and most of them gave them away or sold it for, at cost, basically. To just try to keep going and try to help the community. As Scott Maitland, who owns Topo, told me the other day, he's like, we're in a pandemic, we're just trying to help. I'm not in the business of making hand sanitizer. And I think it was Reason Magazine that broke the story that these distillers got hit with a $14,000 tax bill or a fee. From the FDA.
For what, John?
Because they were making an over-the-counter drug. During the CARES Act, they reclassified the hand sanitizer as an over-the-counter drug, and so it's part of it. All of a sudden, they're making they're not distillers, they're hand sanitizer manufacturers, so they have to pay this fee for the drug.
So the federal government wants money out of it.
Right. I guess it was just the way, hey, they're doing this. And, it's one of those things when you get a bill, you can slip something into it, and I think that's what they did.
But as you mentioned, the folks at Reason
they called
really
them
picked
out.
that up. And what's happened now?
They called them out, and Discus Distillers of, the association in the United States, just, scream bloody murder, so to speak, and the Health and Human Services stepped in and says, "Oh, this is more of a legislative rule. They overstepped the FDA overstepped, and let's." But I mean,
so they're not going to have to pay the $14,000.
Let's drop
fee.
it. No,
yeah.
it was dropped, and it's just important, like importance of the media to say, "Look, this is happening. This is not right," because of the stores were just hit with this $14,000 bill, and they're like, what?
Crazy. Well, back here to North Carolina, John, really, what's the future for bars and taverns and distillers? As you and I are talking, we are at this point where we're trying to speed up the vaccinations through the National Guard. Is that really what it's tied to?
It's unfortunate because we were on such a hot streak. Distillers were going wild. The craft cocktail. And in downtown Raleigh before the pandemic, I mean, it was a haven for craft cocktails and breweries. Breweries are going great guns. Some of them still are. But we'll have to see. I don't think there's going to be any more movement as far as the General Assembly goes. They've done, expanded the takeouts and things like that, but there won't be much more. So we'll see after the pandemic.